All right, let's get started. My name is Melanie Anderson, and I'm going to be doing sort of the intro and conclusion portions of this session, and Annie Orchanian Chef is going to do the demonstration and showing you all about the evidence pyramid and how you can use it to find answers to your questions really quickly and efficiently. So, hello and welcome. We also have Raluca on the workshop right now, and she's going to help with the chat and dropping useful links and any technical problems that might arise. Before we get started, we would like to do our land acknowledgement. So University Health Network operates on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and remains home to many Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Island, and our library is grateful to have the opportunity to work and learn on this land. In addition to respectfully acknowledging the land and its first peoples, we want to recognize that hospital libraries can play a role in legitimizing certain kinds of knowledge through the books and other resources we make available in our collections. Historically, libraries have privileged Eurocentric materials and ignored or excluded Indigenous knowledges. UHN Libraries is committed to providing a collection that supports Team UHN efforts in working towards reconciliation. As you think about and develop your clinical practice, even if you're not working primarily with Indigenous populations, we encourage you to explore and learn from Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous-led healthcare initiatives. Here are a few resources in our collection to help you get started. You can scan the QR code for additional information. You can also find the link on our website. Here are a few resources. We're happy to support your learning and your research, so please feel free to reach out to myself or any other library staff about these resources. Our objectives today are we're going to learn about the Pyramid 5.0 and how to find it. You'll see a demonstration for how to use the pyramid, and you're going to get a chance to explore some of the evidence-based resources and ask some questions.
Thank you. This is the UHN virtual library. You get here by going to UHNLibraries.ca, where library is plural. And to find the pyramid, you simply type in pyramid in the one search bar. And the first thing that comes up is the EBHC Pyramid 5.0. And this is a useful framework for finding information at the point of care. So I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. So what you'll see in this pyramid is that resources are grouped according to the type of resource it is, where the foundation of the pyramid are individual studies. And this is what builds on the information that we need. And every successive layer of the pyramid is one more layer of critical appraisal, so that the top layer of the pyramid is the most critically appraised information that we have. In the ideal universe, everything would be wrapped up into systems like Epic, so that you wouldn't have to do any external searching, and that the answers you need would just pop up when you're looking at a particular patient's chart. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So we have to rely on the other 4 layers of the pyramid. And what you do with this method is that you start at the top and you work your way down. And if you find the answer to your question, you don't have to do any additional searching. So I'm going to start with a problem. You have a patient with irritable bowel syndrome who has come to you and said that they've looked on the internet and they've discovered that peppermint oil could be helpful for their symptoms, and they're wondering if this is true. So you decide that you're going to do some searching to see if this is in fact the case. So we're going to start with the synthesized summaries, and we have links to each of the different types of resources that we're looking at. And I'm going to start with BMJ's best practice. And BMJ's best practice is a disease-based resource. And it is, so unlike UpToDate where you type in everything when you're doing a search, in BMJ's best practice, it is best to type in the disease. So I'm going to type in irritable bowel syndrome. And I'm going to scroll down and you'll notice that they've suggested something to me. And so what you're looking for in an evidence-based product is that it tells you when it was last reviewed, when it was last updated. It gives you an indication of who put this tool together, what their disclosures are, that it has had some form of peer review system and what their disclosures are, and that they're citing the evidence so that you can check up on what recommendations they're giving you. And so we're going to go to the treatment algorithm. And here we'll say that the patient has diarrhea predominant with pain or bloating. And I'm going to go here to antispasmodics. And it says here peppermint oil has antispasmodic properties, and it writes a paragraph about that. And if this answered our question, we wouldn't have to do any additional searching. But let's assume it didn't answer our question, so we'll go back to the pyramid. One of the cool things about the synthesized summaries is that they're quick to search. So I'm going to show you a second synthesized summaries called Natural Medicines. And this is a resource that puts together systematic reviews of complementary and alternative medicines. And I'm going to search here peppermint. And what we're hoping for is that it brings up something called the professional monograph. So I'm going to go to that. And I'm going to click on effectiveness. And here it says that peppermint oil for irritable bowel syndrome is likely effective. And if I click on the details, it gives me the evidence behind which they're giving these recommendations. And if I was wondering what likely effective means, I can just click on it. And it tells me that it's evidence from 2 or more randomized clinical trials or meta-analyses, studies with low risk of bias and high level of validity, and evidence that consistently shows positive outcomes. So again, if this answered my question, I wouldn't have to do any additional searching, but let's assume it didn't, so I'll go back to the pyramid. And the next layer of our pyramid are systematically derived recommendations, which is a long way of saying guidelines. And I'm going to search guidelines via ClinicalKey. And here to do this search, where it says all types, let me just close that window. Where it says all types, you choose guidelines. And I'm going to type in more information, irritable bowel syndrome peppermint, because I only want guidelines that mention peppermint. And 2 guidelines come up, and the Canadian one to me seems to be more relevant, so we're going to go there. And it says view full guideline. And I'm going to do a Control F to find peppermint in this guideline. So it says we suggest offering IBS patients peppermint oil to improve IBS symptoms. And that's a conditional recommendation with low quality of evidence. And if I continue going down in this document, we find a section where they go with that statement and they give more information and the citations behind which they're making that recommendation. So again, if this answered your question, we wouldn't have to do any additional searching, but let's assume it didn't and go back to our pyramid. And here, our next layer of the pyramid are systematic reviews. So I'm going to go to PubMed. And I'm going to type in irritable bowel syndrome peppermint. and do a search. And off the side here, one of the options for the filters is systematic review. So I'm going to click on that. And so what we're hoping when we're doing a search in PubMed is that PubMed understands the terms that we've put into the search bar. PubMed stands for Public Medline, so searches are meant to look very simple like Google. But if you go to the advanced screen and you click on details, you will see how PubMed interpreted your search. And what you're hoping for is that these things called mesh terms turn up. These are medical subject headings. These are the index terms used by PubMed. And so what you're hoping for is that it's identified that you have two separate concepts, and for each concept, it's found an appropriate mesh term, and that it's also done some keyword searching. And it has, so I'm not concerned that there's anything wrong with the search. And if we look at some of these results, there's this meta-analysis from 2014. This one from 2022. Let's see. This one from 2020. And so hopefully that answers your question. But again, if it didn't answer your question, we would go back to the pyramid. And now we will search for individual studies. And when you're in PubMed and you're searching for individual studies, a handy tool to use to limit the amount of results you get is something called Clinical Queries, which is down here under Find. And what Clinical Queries does is it filters your search to the types of questions that best answer a particular clinical question that you might have. So the options are therapy, clinical prediction guides, diagnosis, etiology, and prognosis. So again, I'm going to type in irritable bowel syndrome, peppermint. And I'm going to click on search. And I'm asking a question of therapy, so we want that. And I'm going to choose for it to be a narrow focus. So the searches can be either broad or narrow. Broad finds more things, but there's more noise, and narrow is more specific. And so let's see all our results in PubMed. So here's a randomized controlled trial from 2021. Here's one from 2020. And so hopefully we've reached the foundation of our pyramid. Hopefully at this point you found an answer to your question. The reality is that there isn't always an answer to a question, and so you may have to rely on expert opinion or your colleagues, but at least you know that if you've gone through the pyramid, if an answer is out there, you would have found it. So you can rest assured that you've done all you can at the point of care to be able to answer your clinical question. Usually what I recommend is that it's quick to search synthesized summaries when you're at the point of care. For the other layers of the pyramid, I might set aside some time outside the patient encounter to do the searching. I'm going to stop sharing now.
And I'm going to start sharing. So we wanted to give everyone a chance to practice or play around in these resources. So here we go. I just skipped one. So I found a little scenario that you can use if you would like to explore the pyramid. Remember, you go to UHNLibraries.ca, you type in pyramid, open the pyramid, and that will direct you to the resources. So we have this scenario. A 3-month-old baby was admitted overnight with RSV plus bronchiolitis. They were started on oral steroids, but you're unsure if the steroids will be effective, and you've noticed that not all patients with bronchiolitis are given oral steroids. So you decide you want to see what you can find about the efficacy of oral steroid therapy for bronchiolitis in babies. Take a look at the pyramid and choose a resource and try to find an answer. If you have your own question or something else that you'd like to explore, feel free to do that also. You don't have to do this one if you've got something else that would be interesting for you to look up. And we'd love to know what you found, what your next steps should be. If you have any questions about any of the resources, or if you run into any brick walls, we'd love to hear about it and chat about these resources. So we're going to give you a couple of minutes to play around with that. Please ask all the questions you like in the chat. I'm going to leave this up for just a little bit so that you have a chance to see it when you're going to look, and then we'll have time for just a general question and answer period. So we had a question about just a reminder for the site to search for the pyramid, and Annie's dropped a link there. It's UHNLibraries.ca. It's just the library website. You can also get to it if you're on the intranet by clicking on virtual library there's a black bar there that's got it. So has anybody got any questions or anything? We could sort of unlock the microphones. I think there aren't so many of us here that we couldn't do some out loud if you like.
Oh, I've done so.
You get articles on pyramids. Well, that's weird. Because the first thing that I get at the top, it looks like this pyramid. So it's got this sort of green arrow that's pointing at EBHC Pyramid 5.0. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, good. Okay. There are a lot of articles on pyramids. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit more reliable than Googling, especially these days with the AI responses up at the top for sure. All right, wonderful. Raluca, could you drop the evaluation link in the chat? But when searching different terms on a particular topic, do you need to separate search terms using and? So not usually in these resources. These ones are sort of designed for you to not have to worry about Boolean at all. So the and is more for when you're doing sort of more structured, in-depth kind of searching. So I don't think there's any of these ones that you have to use and for. Are there any? I don't think so.
No, there aren't.
Yeah.
You don't need to use and.
Yeah. It just assumes that. Yeah. Best search for nutrition-related articles. That's a great question.
Do we
Annie?
still have pen?
I believe we still have pen. Let's look. So if I go to more databases, and then I look for pen. There. Pen. So pen is practice-based evidence for nutrition. And oh, I need to move some stuff out of my way so that I can log in. Here we go. So it looks like this, and you can search it basically the same way that you were searching, that Annie was showing you searching in the other resources. You can just type some stuff in here. It works like Google, hit search, and you'll find stuff. There's also an advanced search if you want to get a little more complicated. What if we tried, do we want to try the peppermint one here?
Let's try irritable bowel syndrome and see what happens.
Irritable bowel syndrome. I'm going to cut that part out of the recording. You don't need to hear me try and spell irritable bowel syndrome in my head. So here's the kind of results we get. Background information, a synthesis of recommendations, a toolkit, and you can see when they've been updated. So this toolkit was updated in 2024, so that's really recent. That's nice. And you can see nutrition issues.
And
The
it
cookies
mentions
thing.
peppermint oil there.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's all the sections down the side. So practice questions, background, summary of recommendations, etc. So it's a really good resource, and it is evidence-based, and you can navigate through to the sort of research that this information is based on. No problem. And everyone who's still here, again, if people can fill in the feedback form, we'd really appreciate that. That really helps us plan our upcoming sessions. So, okay. Well, it seems like several folks have left already, and if there's no other questions, thank you very much for attending. We'd love to hear your feedback about this session or any sessions you think we should be offering in future. And if you need to run, please run. We're not going to hold on to you if you need to be somewhere else. So thank you very much for coming.